So in this lesson, we're going to be talking about how to increase, ways of increasing profit margin per child. So there's, like we've spoken about, in previous modules, there's increases to tuition. So that's one obvious way to help this metric as well. But it's, that's not really the focus of increasing profit margin per child. And again, it's very important to focus on this as on a per child metric, and that pretty much goes for all other metrics because the most important, for any business, you have to base your business success metrics on the per customer unit, and for a school, obviously, that is a child. The customers really are the parents, but everything is based economically around children. If you don't have students, then you don't have a school. So there's increasing profit margin. That's a very obvious thing. But we also want to talk about, I think, and this is sometimes the harder discussion, is reducing costs, because there's many ways of reducing costs, and it's really, really easy for different expenses to just kind of start piling up. We can take on all these different software applications. Some of them might be free, but very costly because they take up a lot of your time. So it's really, really important to be considering not just the actual, subscription payment that you might be paying for a piece of software or a service or something that you have, but also how much time goes into managing it. So it's really important to break this down, and that's why you want to take a month. You want to take, your 2 to 3 hours a week. You have to focus on improving the business strategically. For this month, we're going to focus on, cutting costs and increasing the net margin. So some of this is going to be kind of boring work where you're just kind of going through all your different, line item expenses, for your monthly costs, and trying to identify, number one, is there a cheaper solution to any of these? And sometimes a cheaper solution or a more revenue efficient solution might actually have a higher upfront cost every month, because it might actually help you reduce the amount of man hours that goes into accomplishing the goal of what this particular service, the service provider facilitates. So an example of that might be something like bookkeeping, right? So there's a lot of schools I know that have an in-house bookkeeper. It might be someone in the administration who, or maybe even a teacher or a parent that is doing part-time hours to do all the bookkeeping, but a lot of times actually that person isn't necessarily a professional bookkeeper, and it's just something that they do because somebody has to do it. So it might be that there's a provider outside of the school that can do the same work, either using software or just doing the actual service, like consulting services, can do the same amount of work in much less time, and actually probably oftentimes do a better job of it. So you don't actually have to pay that staff person that time. So we're encroaching on another uncomfortable topic, which is, can you reduce your payroll expenses? So of course, nobody wants to be letting people go. And certainly you want to stay away from, once you have teachers that you believe are great, you want to do everything you can to maintain them. Those are ultimately, these are the people that are running the programming in your school. It is your product or your service more than anything else, right? So at the same time, what we see is that there's a lot of people doing a lot of different tasks in schools when it comes to administrative, busy work, or things that take a lot of time, like bookkeeping or different parent communication aspects, or managing the records and or whatnot. And there's if you put the time in, you will find that there are a lot of different ways of accomplishing the same work for a lower cost. And it might be that somebody that's doing extra work doesn't have to, or maybe you can reduce your staff, or maybe there's oftentimes a lot of turnover in the office at a Montessori school. So you don't necessarily have to go laying people off, but if that's what it takes to keep the school going, then it's a hard consideration. But I would say sometimes you have to just put the numbers on paper and see if you can afford to keep people, and and sometimes you've got that that administrative assistant that's coming in full time. Maybe it only really needs to be a part-time job. Or maybe that person that's doing it part-time, if you have the right software and the right services, and it's maybe that's a part-time job that doesn't even need to exist. So technology and service providers, outsourcing, the whole point of them is that you should be able to get the job done in a better way for a cheaper cost. And that's what you have to really, as a responsible business owner, as somebody running a school, you have to look for those opportunities. And running a school is the point of running a school is to provide the best education for children. It's not to keep certain people employed. So you have to make sure that you're being there. At some point, you got to sit down and make a shrewd decision. Is everybody that's currently working here necessary? And by the way, it's not always whether you need to get rid of somebody, but it could be that you need to make their time more so dedicated to things that generate revenue. So, as an example, like if somebody wants to, if there's an opportunity to reduce costs, get a different software application maybe that does more things better. Maybe there's an outsourced service provider. Sometimes software companies have service that you can add on top of it, so it really just takes care of the whole thing. We do things like that at Hubley. So sometimes when you can create the margin in time for that person you were paying on a per hour basis to perform that job, which is now being performed better, cheaper by a service provider, that person on your staff can now do other things. They can maybe do some time on marketing. Maybe they can fill in another role at the school that you've been wanting to hire, and now you're just moving that expense that way. So it's not always just about getting rid of people, but you do have to make sure that you spend the time. Number one, go through all of your expenses, find cheaper and better solutions. Usually, you can do it on an annual basis. There's always new products coming out, and there's, oftentimes the same software companies you have added new features that or new services which allow you to get more net margin, either for the same dollar or for a little bit more, but it creates a better profit margin. So something to always consider is just something that you can't just let sit, because if you're not growing your profit margin, if you're not focused on growing that every year, then again, it's like it's a critical component of your business that is not being kept healthy. It has to go in a positive direction. It has to be going up and to the right, is what they say. So it's not something that you can just leave alone. And unfortunately, actually, you could call this fortunate if you're actually focused on it. Most schools have just kind of let that sit for a number of years because they're focused on other things, being pulled in 1,000 directions. So getting that into a healthy growth rate initially, if this is a new initiative, you're going to find it easy to find some profit margin. It's going to get a little harder, 5 years down the road, but you should still keep on trying year after year. So in this lesson, we're going to be talking about just some mind shift essentially, there's just in general, to think about creating profit margin, there's a way to look at things. So number one, you want to be, there's this concept of lifetime value of a customer. Okay, so most of the time when I talk to schools, actually I would say virtually every single time I talk to a new school that's engaging our services, when we're talking about school management and business and profit margin, when I ask, what's your lifetime value of a student, there's like crickets. It's like, what does that mean? So by lifetime value, what I'm talking about is not just how much revenue does this student generate, what's your tuition revenue or the average revenue with maybe some extra programming that the student might sign up for, aftercare, before care, enrichment programs, etc. You also want to think beyond just the first year. Your goal is to obviously have students for more than just 1 year. So you should know what your lifetime value is. And so that's just essentially a calculation of your average revenue per child multiplied by the average, average lifespan of that child's tuition. So do they come in for on an average of 3 years? Do they come in for an average of 5 years? Or is it 1.8 years? So you want to know what that is, and you want to think more long term with the families. So this all comes from the very top of the funnel, pulling in, creating awareness with the right types of families, understanding who you want to market to. In previous modules, we talked about being in a position to be selective of having families that have more than one child. So that's going to be very helpful as well, right? So and that's going to have an impact on your profit margin per child. You also want to think about, are we selecting children and families that are going to be with us for the long term, right? So if you've got two families and they're both a perfect fit for your child, but one is going to be moving away in a year, they're both a perfect fit for your school. So they're great families, they're looking for the right values, they can both pay tuition. One of them is likely to be moving away in a year. Maybe I talk to some schools and they live close to an army base where a lot of times families come in and out, so they get this really high attrition rate because families are just moving away a lot. So it might be very important to think about increasing the proportion of your students with local families that aren't moving anywhere. And again, to be selective, you have to have you have to make sure that you have enough inquiries coming in so that you can, you don't want to turn everybody away. It's obviously, but you have to think about the value, the health of the school, what's going to enable you to educate more children and have better outcomes for students. That's going to be having more families that are sticking with you for a longer time. So if they've got more, ideally more than one child per family, and that family is local and going to be staying in the area for more than a year, these are the types of families you need to prioritize. There's a couple other ways you can be making money as well, generating revenue. So one idea that I think has a lot of merit is to, especially with with the families that have been with you and have seen what what children do with the Montessori materials in a school. It's really easy to resell Montessori materials. There's a lot of Montessori material makers out there that will be happy to give you an affiliate, have an affiliate relationship. So you set up a little, either just a link on your website or send emails out to the parents that direct your parents over to purchase Montessori materials that'll be shipped over to their house. And if they do that through your marketing efforts, those Montessori material manufacturers will give the school actually a piece of the sale. It's called affiliate marketing, something that a lot of schools should look into. It might help pull in a little bit of extra profit margin for the school. And of course, then there's fundraisers. Now, fundraisers are interesting. Fundraisers are obviously they're donations. So for nonprofits, this is a very common strategy. A lot of schools rely on fundraisers to actually have any type of operating margins. Or sometimes, the fundraisers are the only thing that are keeping the school going. You never want to be in that position. No school should have to rely on fundraisers to keep going. And I would say that use fundraisers as a top up to the school's revenue. A school has something to sell. It's called tuition. And so any school, personally as a donor, if I'm looking at a school that is operating and doesn't need my donation to maintain, it might sound weird, but I would rather give money to a school that doesn't need the money, because I know it's going to go to making an even more incredible school for the children, or help them to grow beyond what their current enrollment will allow. I would rather invest in that, invest my donations into that. It's not really an investment, but I'd rather give my charity to that school, because I'm more assured that school is going to use my hard-earned donation charity money in a better way. They're not going to be pocketing it. It's going to be invested into the school by people that are showing me that they are actually better at running the business side. I would rather do that than donate to a school that's failing and not able to at least keep the lights on, based off providing something that parents, right, should be paying for. So think about that too, right? So it's a lot easier to actually raise money from donors when you are running a healthy organization that doesn't need their money as much, right? When you can show them that your donations are going to be going to something that is just going to take this great thing and make it all that much better, rather than your donations are going to come here and just keep us alive, right? Your donations are going to come here and keep paying these salaries to people that are kind of underperforming. So which is a more compelling compelling donation opportunity? It's the one where it's going to be going to a school that is more apt to take your donation and turn it into more education, better education for children. So again, and that's why I kind of preface this with how to look at things, because how you approach generating money and spending money is your mindset is going to have a really, really big impact on the overall performance of the school as far as the business side goes. So again, just as a summary, you have limited time to work with. So when you've got, let's say, you've got your month dedicated to working on the net profit, the profit margin per child, KPI. You've got 2 to 3 hours a week to do that ideally. You want to be as focused as possible. So you want to look at going through all the different expenses, seeing which ones are going to be, which ones you can get rid of, seeing where you can take the money you're spending for this software, this service provider, or this staff person, and use it more efficiently, get more bang for your buck, essentially. And you want to look at enrolling the right families that will have more children per family, and stay with you for a longer average program per child, program lifetime value per child. And this comes from all the way from the top of getting your marketing right, so you're in a position to be very selective. And then look at reselling Montessori products, because you've got built-in customers that are already sold on these products, and you don't have to start manufacturing products or anything like that. you probably know who the manufacturers are. Give them a call, send them an email, seeing if you can create an affiliate relationship where you send them business and they give the school a cut of that sale. And they really should, because it makes sense for them as a business, because it's free marketing. They didn't have to spend anything to get that customer. It's pure profit, so they can essentially their marketing expense is giving you your percentage of that sale. And it's a lot of physical product manufacturers love that approach. It's something that's very healthy for their business. So don't feel like you're going and begging. You're actually you're going to get a very positive response from any Montessori manufacturer, where you can tell them you're going to send them your parents as buyers. They're going to be happy to give you a piece of that. And then fundraisers, again, I would say first and foremost, to really get to have that really strong relationship with donors, think about not needing their money first and foremost. And then when you have great results to show, a very healthy business and organization to show, it's going to be a lot easier to go out and raise money with that as part of your presentation. So all of these things working together will, you're not going to solve them all in 1 year, but every year you want to come back to this metric. Take that month, take those 2 to 3 hours a week. How do I brainstorm, get together with people, do some deep dives? How do we cut down on our costs while also increasing our performance and our efficiency on an organizational level? And how can we be creative and just bring in more revenue? So if you work on that, 1 year to the next, increasing that by 10% from 1 year to the next, increasing your profit margin per child by 10%, becomes an easy thing. If you can carve out that time and give it that focus, you can definitely do it.